Hello, welcome to Talk Seagulls, and it's the very boring point of the season where it's the first international break and we don't know what to talk about and there's nothing going on. But I have been joined with Louis, my friend. It's good to have you back in the Caxton.
Yeah, good to be back.
Mate, I didn't realise it had been since, May, April this year?
Yeah, it's been a long old time.
It has been a while. It has been a while, but you good?
Yeah, good, man, good. There's a lot to catch up on.
For sure. Well, there is a lot to catch up on because Brighton have had a very good start to the season, I'd say. Considering sort of the massive amount of change with obviously Hertzler coming in, so many big players coming in. We've seen a few hit the ground running already. I want to hear sort of the thoughts, where you think we're at as a football club. It's so easy to go and do, going into a season predictions, but I think we're going to finish 8th, I think we're going to finish 7th. That all sort of boring piece of content. But I wanted to wait actually for this first international break to get that thought of, okay, we've seen a little bit, we've seen a bit what we're about, the sort of style we're going to be playing. So now what's the prediction? Now what's the feeling in your mind?
Well, we are, fair enough. We're only a couple of games into the season, right? And it's impossible to get a real picture of how everything is going to unfold, essentially. But if you have a look at the way that we've played, I think initially, our defence has looked a lot more rigid. We've reinforced in midfield and immediately we can see that the tempo is much higher. It's a lot more exciting football. We're creating a lot more. And also, just watching the whole team come together and those performances, like especially against Man United, where it was gritty, right? It wasn't the most, aesthetically pleasing performance ever, but the players really, they really held it together. And then obviously for Pedro to score in the 94th minute, that's serious. It's to show that we really do mean business because, United are a much stronger side than they have been, certainly for a couple of years, I'd say. So for us to pull out a victory at that point, that's big for us, I think.
Agree. I think in the way that result come about, it's just, I don't think we'll forget that João Pedro moment for a long time. No. I think that will be, the Alexis moment and all that sort of thing. We've had a lot of fun with United, and let's face it.
We have, yeah. It's a shame Pascal Gross ain't here anymore. He used to have a lot of fun.
Oh, mate, yeah, absolutely. But, João Pedro is seeming to take his spot. He scored against him last time, didn't he? He scored against him this time. Yeah. I think, the game, obviously, before the end of last season was a bit of an unfair one. And I think everyone had sort of given up, and so we don't take too much from that one. But our United record is pretty impeccable. We're obviously through to the next round of the Carabao Cup, etc. So I think we're in a good spot. All the signings we've made are looking good, apart from the very obvious thing of Matt O'Reilly's injury, which is I don't need to talk about it too much.
No,
it's all been sort of gone over, and we've dug out Crawley and whatever else. But when you look at Brighton as a whole at the moment, you say we've looked more rigid at the back. I'd actually disagree with you. And so I think, don't get wrong, the defence wasn't the best last year. We did ship a lot of goals, but I still am a bit, I don't know. We have moments.
We do have moments, but I think every team does.
Teething problems, maybe. Yeah?
Teething problems, I think, yeah. And again, because we're so early into the season, I think it's quite difficult to say, we've got a serious defensive issue, like straight away.
Oh yeah, no, I'm not saying that. It's more like a, teething problems probably is how I'd put it down to. But I don't know. I just always feel like we're a bit more. We're completely stacked up front now. Put it that way. The attack we've got is probably one of the best in the league in terms of squad depth. Fact, right? Midfield, I think we're looking better. We're starting to improve, definitely, and we're getting there. I can agree with that. But it's still that sort of defensive. Van Hecker and Dunk, for example, I absolutely love the guys. But one injury to one of them, and I do have that slight concern, that slight reservation as to what could happen.
Yeah. No, I think that is a very fair point. I think we have, our starting 11 across the board. Yeah, it's a very, very strong side.
It's good.
It's a very strong side. However, the depth that we have in defence, I think, obviously we've reinforced with the signings of Kadioglu, right? That's a very good signing because he can cover both fullbacks, and obviously we know that Lamptey, as good as we know he can be, injury prone. Veltman can cover right centre back and right back. He's got that versatility. But if you look overall, we've moved Barco out. Obviously he's now gone on loan to Sevilla.
I think probably Lamptey will go at the time.
I think Lamptey's probably got a good chance of going as well. But I just think, we have the players to cover, but whether that gap between the starting players and the players that can come in and cover them, whether that's a noticeable change, I think is the main thing.
Yeah.
And we have looked at We looked at Buscagli from PSV, left-sided centre-back. You know, he would have been a very, very solid option, I think, for us. But again, whether that is someone that can, you know, maybe end up taking the reins from Dunk long-term or something like that.
Probably not so much.
Probably not.
Good cover sort of player.
Yeah, good cover for sure.
But I think we're in that situation of, maybe the defence is a little bit lighter than going forward. But I don't think, you know, we should be focusing on negatives by any stretch. It's just one of them things that come to mind. If you're looking at the rest of the season, you instantly look for things that could potentially go wrong, if you know what I mean. I think
for sure, yeah.
Last season I had that same sort of reservation, but it was more on midfield. I think because we lost Caicedo and McAllister, and every single time there was a turnover, it looked a bit dodgy for us. And that was something that we noticed in the first game at Luton, really, last year. Definitely, I think they had a couple of chances. I think it was at Carlton Morris, was it him? And he's just so many times he was getting the better of our midfield and their midfielders as well. But this time, obviously, that strengthened up, and that is a spot that we've really put our, you know, sort of focus into.
Something we definitely needed to do.
Yeah, Matt Sweefer's, you know, early signs look good, but particularly this is the guy I want to mention the most. Is Carlos Baleba. I do feel like this is his year. I think if it's going to be his year, it has to be this year.
It's going to be the Basuma breakout year.
It's like a Basuma vibe, right? You get that sort of, you know, do you remember the Basuma game I think it was Southampton in the Cup? And I think it was the first time.
He scored a banger?
I don't know if he scored a banger. I think it was just a good performance. And it was like one of them where it was, you know, the first good performance we really saw from him. Because I think if you remember, he didn't come in and start straight away. He took a bit of time, as did Caicedo.
Yeah, I was going to say, Caicedo took a long time to actually break in.
Yeah, and Baleba's been there for a year. Yeah. And, you know, he had glimpses last season, don't get me wrong, definitely. I think the chance that he had, he did do quite well in. But there's always that naivety with him. But it seems as though that's being cut out and we're seeing the better of Baleba now.
I think we definitely are. I mean, yeah, considering he's 21 years old, like he's still very much very much in the beginning of his career. But you can see even since he first came into the side, I can't remember who it was against. It might have been City where he got dispossessed for, I think it was their second goal.
Yeah.
It was very early into the game. It was a silly mistake. And all of a sudden, you think something like that, you know, if he was playing for like a Chelsea, for example, he might have been completely hounded. Right? Yeah, hounded, exactly. Yeah. Whereas with us, we gave him the chance to be nurtured and sort of not try and rush him or fast track him into a spot that he wasn't exactly comfortable with. Because bearing in mind, when he came to us from Lille, he only had 10 senior appearances. Yeah. Like he was still very
it was like literally in the 10s, 20s of appearances, and he wasn't a big player for them at all. I think it was a big fee, obviously, for what we paid. I think it was close to around 30 million. Again, and it's not. I wouldn't say it's that much of a surprise if you're going to get a quality player these days and they're young. You have to put the money in, and that's not a problem for us nowadays, which is a very nice position to be in. But the quality of Baleba is something that I really like, is how dominant he is. He's almost like this. We were talking about Mwepu off air, weren't we?
We were, yeah.
About sort of like what could have been. It's such a sad situation for him. But just Yaya Toure vibes, right? And I get that from Baleba. I do.
A little bit, yeah. I mean, I think the thing with Baleba, right, is he makes those kind of marauding runs forward, but he's very much like happy to get involved in doing the dirty work, which is something that I saw a lot of Caicedo when he was really breaking out. And again, like I think he's really starting to find a groove for himself in this team. Like when he first got in, obviously under De Zerbi wasn't entirely confident to just thrust him in straight away. When, you know, we were playing that pivot of Gilmour and Gross, right? Which defensively, like no disrespect to either of them, but it's not their forte, right? It's not their forte whatsoever. That is the role that Baleba is going to take, right? And depending on obviously the system that Hutzler wants to play, whether that's going to be that sort of 4 in midfield or it's going to be the 4-2-3-1, kind of similar to how De Zerbi did it. You know, if he's going to play that sort of double pivot again, you've got Vifa next to Baleba. I think that has got all the potential,
it's one of
all the qualities.
Better double pivots in the league. That I mean, we didn't have much right to sign. It's Vifa, isn't it? I should be saying Vifa. We didn't have much, a right to sign Vifa as we probably did. I mean, he was linked with obviously Liverpool, I think, as well. A very, very talented player. I think the Everton game was maybe tilted a couple of perceptions of him at the beginning. I think because he had that first 45, which maybe wasn't his best. He was a bit rusty, but he didn't have a pre-season, has to be said, and he had a bit of a settling in period here as well. But a very, very quality player again. And probably someone by January time, you're going to see really establish himself as one of the first teamers here and one of the first names in the team sheet.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, he's a very good player. So midfield-wise, we're looking good. And I think, that going into the rest of the season is a really nice sort of comfortable, I'm feeling pretty good. If you get onto the attack side of things, I think this is where it gets a bit more fun. The conversation's a very good one because we're talking goals, we're talking assists, we're talking take-ons, we're talking serious players, right? Up front, we're looking really, really strong. Yeah. And particularly on the wings. Mitoma and Minte and Gruder, who we haven't even really seen yet.
No.
It's crazy, really.
It is crazy. I mean, we've got a good problem in that we have certainly reinforced in that attack, in like the depth that we have, especially like you say in the wings, because last season, right, we had Simon Adingra, and I looked this up, and he played the fourth most minutes of any outfielder in our squad. Bearing in mind, he also played every game at AFCON for the Ivory Coast, and he played half of the season on the right. And I've seen him get a lot of pelters on Twitter. I think it's quite undeserved because he spent half that season absolutely knackered from having played so many minutes, and then also having to play in a position that he's not used to. And you can see it's clearly weaker for him because he doesn't have that same strength on his other foot. Yeah. But as soon as you put him on the left, you see the quality that he brings. You see immediately it's that spark, it's that sudden like burst of energy that if you've had Mitoma running at you for 70 minutes, you're going to already be knackered. And then all of a sudden you got Adingra coming on, jinking left, right and centre. And then all of a sudden you're creating so much in that late stage. And I think the sub that Hertzler made to bring him on against United, that was a difference maker. Yeah. Like people say, we brought Rutter on and, he had a quiet debut, I'd say, against United.
He only had 7 minutes.
Exactly. It's quite hard to judge off of that small sample size. But Adingra comes on, and in that 20 minutes, he is causing absolute havoc down that right-hand side. And that, I believe, was the game changer. Yeah. Because
it's not unreasonable to say. I think, I think Belabor as well probably has to be included in game changes for that game. But Adingra he just gets a hard time. He does. He gets such a hard time because, as you say, the amount of minutes he played, as I've said before, so many people have said it in the past now, that he wasn't supposed to play that many games. No, he wasn't signed as the player that should have been our leading player. And I think actually what we've noticed this season is because he got so much game time last year and he's getting a bit more, cameo appearances now, he's not getting so much. He's actually he's actually looking a bit better. And I say that in the way of we don't expect too much anymore, and he doesn't have that expectation weight on him. So when he comes on, he's actually adding goals and assists to his game pretty much I think it is every time, including pre-season.
I think so, yeah. I mean, even last season, considering how a lot of people... I mean, obviously, I know not every performance that you put in was the best. He was still putting up fairly decent numbers last season. Solid. Playing out of position, and, he's covering for the likes of Solly March, the fact that Buonanotte was kind of shoehorned into that right wing spot for a while. Obviously, we didn't have Solly March, but now we've reinforced, we've brought in Gruder, we've brought in Minter, who, we've got that option now on the right-hand side, so we don't have to try and force Adingra into that starting right-wing spot where he's clearly not as comfortable, right? So you reduce his minutes, you give him some rest, and all of a sudden, he gives you that spark again. He gives you that spark off the bench because obviously, quality-wise, he's not even close to the level that Mitoma can produce. Of course. And that's no slight on Adingra at all.
It's just because Mitoma's very, very, very good.
Exactly. there's no shame in being like slightly worse than Karo Mitoma because he's phenomenal. Yeah. Right? He's an absolutely phenomenal player. So having that ability to, take some weight off your own shoulders by only playing maybe 25, 30 minutes a game in a position that you're way more familiar with, that you're way more comfortable in playing, in a role that's probably more suited to you anyway, all of a sudden, your impact is going to be crazy. And you know what? If he grows into it, and maybe he might earn himself a big money move next summer. Because
you're right. Actually, I mean, I think when you look at the teams that he's being linked with, there's obviously a reason for it. He's being linked with Arsenal. He's being linked with, I think it was Spurs, one of them as well in there.
Linked with Marseille.
Yeah, I'm surprised. Marseille. Anyway, I'm not even going to get into Marseille at the moment.
Not at all.
But yeah, I think Adingra's had a really hard time, and I do feel a bit bad for him. I think every single time he has played recently anyway, he's always sort of come on and put on a decent show. As you say, he did change the game at Manchester United. He even contributed in the FA Cup as well. So that was, in the Carabao Cup as well. So that's another nice little moment for him. But it seems to be him a lot. You know, it always seems to fall to him, and the moment seems to fall to him without it really, being taken into. And maybe that's something that Dingra can certainly take. And just while we're on the wings, we've not seen anything of Brian Gruder yet. Brian Gruder, another one that's just a ridiculously talented player. We've not seen, obviously a massive sample size of him, but again, a player that's going to be very, very exciting. Signed for 25 million. If you believe Fabrizio Romano, he called him the dream signing of Brighton this season. And we're talking about a dream signing whilst talking about so many other players, by the way. We haven't even really seen this guy.
Yeah, no. I mean, the way that Gruder, has sort of risen to this new level of hype and everything, from what people saw of him in the Bundesliga last season, like he has really, for a kid, he's only 20 years old.
Yeah, something like that.
To some of the teams that he was linked with as well, like the hype around him, all of a sudden, this kid's going to be an absolute firecracker.
Yeah,
like.
People saying he gives that knockout vibes, and I like that comparison.
I do like that comparison.
It's like a Cole Palmer as well, I think is what I got told, a bit like a Cole Palmer-y sort of player.
Yeah.
And, I obviously Palmer plays for Chelsea now. We're not supposed to like him, but he is a player I do like. He always seems to put on a bit of a show. And then these are the sort of players we need, right? Players that are going to be able to change a game, players that are going to be able to influence. At the end of the day, it's a squad game now. I've seen a lot of sort of Brighton fans on Twitter saying, and almost complaining maybe that the squad's too big. And whilst I do get it, but, there is outgoings ongoing at the time of recording this. But whilst, we've got this squad, I can't help but think it's only a good thing. We've never had this situation where Brighton have a squad. People don't realise how tough the Premier League is these days. And to be able to get from all the way from August all the way to May, you think about how much a person changes in 9 months. True. Think how much a squad can change in 9 months. We're talking a squad of about 30 players. Very, very, very good players here.
I think, yeah. I've seen a few things on Twitter recently, like, we've been bringing in these people. We've brought in Kadioglu, and suddenly people are saying, oh, Brighton have got a massive squad now. They're saying, oh, we've suddenly got loads
Chelsea
of numbers.
Accusations.
Exactly. Why do people not make these same accusations about Brighton? But the difference between us and the likes of Chelsea, for example, is that when we bring players in, they have a very defined role.
Yeah.
And, we're looking at the likes of Dahoud and Moda leaving, right? We brought in O'Reilly, we've brought in Vifa, and we've still got players like Yasin Ayari. Unbelievable player, by the way.
Been looking really good.
Seriously solid. And, we brought in these reinforcements, and all of a sudden people are going, oh, they've got like 8 options in midfield. We've lost Gross. Gilmour's on the way to Napoli.
Gross had 4 players as well. That's what people forget. He's not just gross. He's gross, but he's taken about 30, 40 goals out of the team.
Exactly.
You're also taking a potential right back, left back, midfielder, striker, winger. You're taking everything.
Exactly. He was the ultimate, it kind of sounds disrespectful to say, but he's the ultimate utility player.
Absolutely.
He could cover any position, but
Greg
also...
Halford vibes.
Greg Halford.
That was a pull, wasn't it? That was
harsh. But no, the fact that he could create such an impact, I think it was more the fact that he could create such an impact from all those positions. It wasn't just like he could cover there and just be okay. Like, you could put Gross in any of those positions and he would still change a game. And I think the fact that, like we say, we're losing Gross, we're losing Gilmour, but we've got these reinforcements coming in. Like, we're covering ourselves really, really well. And I think, we signed Yalkuye, who's just gone on loan in Sweden. I can't remember what the team was called. Was it Austria? Oh, yeah.
Same team as, that's what something like it. The same as, what's his name? Kel Sherpen. We forget. Yeah, we have him on our books as well. Kel Sherpen.
Yeah, exactly.
He's been around. He seems to be around here for ages now, hasn't he? The goalkeeper.
We've got that depth, right? And obviously, people are saying, "Oh, why aren't we getting the same stick as Chelsea for what we're doing? We're building a sensible squad." Like Chelsea, what they've done is they've brought in all these big names, all these huge name attackers.
They all have massive expectation and egos as well to deal with this situation.
But what I was thinking, I'm not going to make this a thing about Chelsea, because I could talk for hours about this, because it's so frustrating to see that you brought in all these players and they're all being told all these expectations, saying you're going to be the star man. But then I can't remember which game it was last year. They had a game where they won a penalty, right? They're like 4-1 up.
That was it, yeah.
And it doesn't matter. Like, Palmer's on a hat trick, right? Sure, I get it. But you've got 4 players fighting over a penalty. When you're 4-1 up, you've created that mentality in your squad because everyone's fighting for their lives. It's a dog-eat-dog environment. Whereas in Brighton, it's harmonious because everyone knows their role.
Yeah.
Everybody knows exactly what is expected of them, what they can expect. And to do all of this and build a sensible squad, obviously, around a manager that, it's going to fit that system. Whereas Chelsea have kind of bought all these players and gone, I hope a manager works with it.
Yeah. Good luck.
Exactly.
But
we were sensible. We brought in players that we knew would fit within our ethos because we employ managers based on what Bloom and Barber see as the future of the club. Whereas I think Chelsea kind of treat it like career mode on FIFA.
Yeah, I think everything you've said is very fair and it's very true. I think when you look at the squad we've got, it's second to none really. You've got. I'm not looking at City. I'm not looking at Arsenal. I'm not looking at. I'm talking in our group, right? Because the Premier League is in groups, isn't it? Really, you've got your top 2, then you've maybe got 3 to about 5, which could be anything, and then I think you've got 6 to about 11, where we actually don't know who's. Anyone can really break out from sort of Wolves to Villas, Newcastle. I think Villa and Newcastle maybe stretch being a little bit above people in terms of their money, but. Then you've got a bit of a best of the rest. And I think that's where we are. I think we are the best of the rest in terms of squad. I don't think many of them teams have a squad quite like ours in terms of individual talent and quite well-balanced talent. I think in terms of quality in the ranks that we've got, we actually forget how good some of these players are. And I think one of those has to be mentioned is Karu Mitoma. It's because not that I forgot about Mitoma, but you always remember him, but you don't realise just how good he is until you then see him again. And I think when we see him back here, as we have done already for the beginning of the season, it's a complete breath of fresh air. It's so ridiculously good to watch. And then whilst he's now got Minte on the other side to actually have to, you've got both sides to worry about again. It's not like it's just all going through Mitoma. We've got a lovely balance of attacking play. And whilst you mentioned Jorginho, I'll get to him now. Jorginho and João Pedro, Danny Welbeck, runners, players that will cover distances, not just distances around the box, but distances dropping deeper, covering a lot of ground. I think Jorginho's stats at Leeds were insane for sort of not only distance covered, but tackles won. I think aerial duels as well. He wasn't even too bad, and duels in the box. These sort of chances created. I think his conversion rate's not the best in front of goal, but that's not what he's been signed for.
Bobby Firmino vibes.
Bobby Firmino is a great shout. That's a very good one. And actually, he was probably one of the key factors in Mane and Salah being as good as they were.
Oh, absolutely. I've always said that Firmino was the glue guy in that front three.
Yeah.
Because Mane and Salah, obviously, they're very far apart. They can create things on their own, but having that key in the middle, that link-up player, that Firmino, for them, he was the connector between their midfield, which at the time was pretty strong, right? Very strong. But then to have that connect to those two wingers, I suppose, who are unbelievable individual players, that you give them that key, which is Firmino, all of a sudden, they are absolutely transformed. And I've said this since day one, but what I see, Rutter can definitely be that player, no doubt about it. But what I've seen from João so far this year, him in that sort of number 10-ish kind of role, he's dropped in a lot deeper. Like you say, there was a play against United where I think he might have got dispossessed. He then chased the ball back 40 yards, put in a big challenge, right? And then transitions the ball straight back towards their box. And that was in the 75th, 80th minute. He's already played the whole game.
Yeah.
That hunger, right?
Yeah.
That desire to go win the ball back. And the fact that, like you say, dropping into those positions, he's everywhere. He's making himself a threat all over the pitch. And this is something I think that's going to be really, really key for us because obviously, like you said, last year, Mitoma was the sole threat because we didn't have anything on the right-hand side, any proper playing on the right-hand side because we had our main right winger injured in Solly, right? So everything was focused on Mitoma. People could double team and triple team, and we saw it in Europe, right? His threat was so nullified, people were saying, oh, Mitoma's fallen off. But now we've got the support on the right and we've got the support in the middle. Suddenly, we have so many focal points that teams are not going to know who to focus on. And this, I think, is going to free up the likes of Danny Welbeck, who, by the way, I think is a very underappreciated player. Very underappreciated.
Close to being our top scorer, isn't he? I think in Premier League.
I think so. Yeah, he's definitely getting there now.
6 goals, I think. 6 is what.
And what I notice about Welbeck again is that he's going to be he can be really that impact player. And the fact that now we've got that almost triple threat behind him, you've got Mitoma, you've got Pedro, and whether that's going to be Minte or Gruder, depending on who, really finds themselves a real solid role on that right-hand side. You've got 3 players to worry about. And all of a sudden, defenders are almost going to forget about Danny Welbeck, who is an established Premier League goal scorer.
Yeah.
And I think that's going to be the key for him this year to really, I wouldn't say take his game to the next level, but it's going to give him a chance to be really freed up.
Yeah, it's true. And I think this is what I'm trying to say. When you look at the squad's sort of depth and talent in depth, particularly up front, it's so exciting because it really is the sky's the limit here, because anyone could score an X amount of goals and it wouldn't be surprising. Mitoma could end the season on 15, 20 goals. No one would be that surprised. João Pedro could get another 20 goals and assists. No one would be surprised. Pedro probably is more than the rest. But Minte, for example, I mean, he was free scoring in pre-season. It has to be said. I think every single time he was involved in the game, there was a goal contribution. So these are all players that could comfortably finish on sort of 15, 20 goals and assists each. Provided obviously the season's a very long one. But there's not so much of a concern if one of them gets injured and we don't know who comes in next. So I think that's where we're at as a team. We're looking really, really good. But Louis, because we've done all the chat, we've talked about how good we are. Now we need to get some really good predictions in going into the rest of the season.
Okay.
Obviously, it's a very long one. In fact, you know what? Let's do a prediction till January, and then a prediction till the end of the season. Because I could say to the end of the season, but things could change in January. We could get new players again.
Oh yeah, of course. Again. Yeah.
So let's say January, and then we'll do from January to May. Okay. So by January, where do you think Brighton will be?
To be honest, I think we should be looking at that sort of Conference League spot by that point, because we're not, obviously we've got a very, very tough start to the league. Like, we're playing how many of the top 6, like the traditional big 6 in the first 10 games? We're playing a lot of them, right? That is that is a real trial by fire, especially for Hertzler, coming into I guess you call the biggest league in the world, and all of a sudden he's coming in and he's facing the 6 traditionally best teams in England in his first 10 or 11 games.
Yeah.
That is a huge test, not only of your tactical nous, but also your mentality. The fact that you might get an absolute beatdown from Man City to not knock you back and go, oh, okay, I might be a bit screwed here. I might be a bit out of my depth. It's going to be a real test to see whether he can really, and I absolutely back him to keep his head and in those situations where we're not necessarily dominating the game, because obviously we know that, other teams know that we can dominate, but we also know that teams can dominate us in that exact same way. It's the teams like Man City, who are more than happily going to run over us.
There's plenty of teams that can.
But I'd say, I think honestly, I think aiming for that sort of 7th, 8th place, from seeing how all the other teams have started, I genuinely think there's maybe 5 or 6 teams that are looking genuinely quite strong. So I would be quite happy if we were in that sort of 7th, 8th spot.
7th, 8th would be really very good. Come on, give us a bold opinion in between. I'll let you think of yours, and I'll say where I think we could be. I'm just thinking of a bold statement, something that you think could change, or someone that you could think break out maybe I want something that we can look back on here, and the viewers at home could look back on and say fair play or you idiot, and I don't want any in between.
Right.
All right.
You want a hot take?
I want one of them in the comments as well. Actually, put that out in the comments. Your bold opinion so we can all revisit this video at the end of the season and in January. One for January, one for the end of the season. So for me, for January at the moment, I think, I'd agree with 7th and 8th. I think, as you say, there are some big games. We have to play both our rivals before that point in Palace and Chelsea. Joking aside, though, they're 2 big games that they're going to want to beat us, and I think
it's very much. I think the mental side of that,
those
fixtures are almost as big as the actual skill side of it.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it tests Hertzler. Seeing him. You remember Potter, for example, always struggled in games that we
hostility.
Hostility.
He hated.
We always struggled with that, and to be fair, that's what De Zerbi did really well here, was maybe giving that extra winning mentality and making us become a little bit more ruthless. So hopefully Hertzler continues that, and I think he probably will. Otherwise, we wouldn't have got him. I think that's what we've sort of done with these managers. They always just build on each other, don't they, every time?
Exactly. There's always a long-term outstanding plan in place.
Absolutely. So, I'll back that. I'll back a 8th, I think, by
January. Okay.
Yeah. And don't get me wrong, I think there will be bumps. Hence why I'm saying 8th. Otherwise, I'll be saying we're going to win the league. There's going to be bumps. You've got to play tough teams away. You've got to play, big rival games, as I said before. So not only that, but I think, the players we brought in are young. They are always going to be brilliant. Minte, for example, against Man United was quite wasteful, whereas Minte against Everton was superb. So, there are going to be times where these players do flip-flop, and that's why you have to have so many of them to cover for each other.
Yeah. Actually, one thing on Minte, I'm quite glad you pointed that out, because when he's in a situation where he only has like one or two options, he looks unbelievable because he instantly goes for the kill.
Yeah.
Right. And that instantaneous like directness and real like ruthlessness is something that I think we really lacked. Whereas when he's given like 3 or 4 options, he's sort of looking about and going, oh, I don't know. Like, he's a bit almost overwhelmed by how many options he has.
Yeah.
So if you put him in that ISO situation, for example, he's running at his fullback. We saw it in pre-season. We saw it in the Everton game. He was cooking, absolutely cooking. And against United, where they trapped him in a little bit more, and he had to have more options to look up whether he goes for a cross into Welbeck or whether he plays it back to the fullback behind him or into midfield. When he was in that position, again, he looked a little bit more wasteful because he was kind of like, well, what do I do?
Yeah.
If he can iron that out of his game, he's going to be electric.
Yeah,
Genuinely
agree. And I think that's just part of it, isn't it?
It's growing.
It's part of growing. And I think, these players are all teenagers. They're all young 20-year-olds.
That's something we forget, actually.
We're still young 20-year-olds. I mean, there's a lot of things that we have to learn, right?
Yeah.
So, it's all part of it. And that's just how it works. But yeah, so I'll say 8th. You got a bold opinion yet?
A bold opinion, does it have to be about position or can it just be anything?
Be anything. Go anything. Okay. I'll just say, like, it's something that we can... right now, it sounds crazy.
I have one.
Okay.
And I have stood by this since the day that we brought him in and he started really making an impact. Yasin Ayari is going to be one of the better players. I'm not saying necessarily just this season, but in the future, he's going to end up holding down that starting midfield spot. Whether it's for us or whether it's for some team in Europe, this guy is the nuts. I'm saying this to you now, Ryan, like genuinely, from what I've seen, it's like watching Pascal Gross, but faster.
Yeah.
The way that he plays those incisive balls, the way that he can turn, he can play with his back to goal, he can play everything, right? He's got the skill set. And if he can just build up his physicality a bit, and you saw that impact that he made. Obviously, Everton were on the back foot when he came onto the pitch. But the impact that he made after coming onto the pitch was phenomenal. And he just brings that little spark. And he did it against United as well. It was a smaller cameo, but when I see him on the pitch, I see so much of Gross's game in what he does. And the fact that he can play as that sort of slightly more advanced player, like almost a number 10, or he can be a little bit more deep lying. He's versatile. He can play in different systems, right? I'm telling you, this kid is going to be the future.
Yeah.
This is my bold prediction, because a lot of people have said, oh, he's not quite built up for the Premier League. He's not quite there. Maybe not right now. But I'm telling you, there was a game, I can't remember how many, I think it was the season before last, against Bournemouth. He was absolutely
he was all over the place, wasn't he? And
genuinely.
I think, I'll give you that. I think my one's, if we're going to stick on players, it's probably Brian Gruder. It's the one I really think could be a serious player. One that's not here at the moment, probably Ibrahim Osman. It's one to watch.
Definitely.
I like the look of him a lot. So I'll stick with them too. I think as well, I think Welbeck will break the record. I think he'll do it.
You reckon he'll do it? Well,
yeah,
when by?
I think it's probably going to happen. I reckon he'll do it by January.
You reckon?
Yeah, I think he's got 6 goals in him before January.
Well, you know what? I actually don't think that's too outrageous, because like I said, now that we've got that the
So much
three
more
behind him
creativity,
that are
right?
all threats all the time, that's going to give him so much more freedom. You
Yeah.
saw it. You saw it against Everton. When you have Pedro and you have Mitoma in transition, they're running at their men. All of a sudden, Welbeck's got a one-on-one. And that's when I think really he looks a lot stronger. And then all of a sudden, you get him into that ISO situation, and then he scored that goal. He's going to be a completely transformed player.
Yeah.
Because obviously last season we were very unlucky with injuries, right? So a lot of the onus was put on him to really score goals in situations when like he has almost too much to do, which is not his game, right?
Okay, I like it.
Do you see what I mean?
Yeah. All right, end of the season then. final things. What do you reckon? Because I do you know what? I'll go first if you like. I think we'll just go and do it. I think we'll go and do it, and I think we'll get Europe again.
Okay.
I think we will. And I don't think that's outrageous now, but I think when I put it in I did a 4-4-2 piece, and my uncle read it, and he was like, "Are you joking?" And I was like, "Nah, I think we'll be all right."
When you say Europe, though.
Europa League, at least.
Okay, at least.
Yeah, if we don't go and overperform, which can happen, I think we'll get Europe again.
Do you know what? If we're going to do that, I'm going to say this might be a really, really outrageous prediction.
Go on then.
But
YOLO, mate. Who cares?
Yeah, sure,
Chilling
who
at the
cares?
Caxton, having a couple beers, just say what you want.
I'm thinking we might even push top 4.
Right.
I'm not saying this for clicks. Like, listen, hear me out.
Finish the stream.
Hear me out. Okay. So, you look at what Aston Villa did last season. Okay. Now, if you look at their team, sure, they've got a very good manager in Unai Emery, right? He's a seriously good manager. And the squad that they had was very, very good. But they lost Douglas Luiz. They haven't necessarily got the reinforcements.
They were very good. I think the only trouble with Champions League is how many teams are competing for it. That's the only reason I'd say.
Yeah, and it's very, very competitive in that space. But I honestly reckon 4th or 5th isn't entirely out of the question. Genuinely isn't.
It's not out of the question because actually in that season we got Europe, we weren't far off champions. Do you remember?
No, it was all very close.
About it.
It was all very, very close.
It was a genuine question. I think we slipped up on 2 or 3 games towards the end of the season. I'm struggling to remember what they were off the top of my head now, which is unusual. But I think, I can't remember that games. Oh, God.
It was it was all very, very close though.
Yeah.
That was the thing.
Forest, wasn't it? That was the humbler. Forest humbled us big time because we were looking good, and that semi-final at Wembley was probably one of the worst things to happen.
That killed me.
That's what killed us. And I think that if it wasn't for that game, and actually that's maybe a point in itself.
I think our heads were gone, weren't they?
I think it just knocked 2 or 3 games. It was enough to kill it for us, and it just let them get away from us, and that's what killed us. And that's probably where I'd leave that one. But I think, cups or Europa League.
Oh, actually, that's a good point. I mean, looking at how we're going in the cup, I think the performance against Crawley, not the best, right?
No.
It wasn't our strongest.
It wasn't a 4-0
by
win, was
any
it?
means at all. And we still got a 4-0.
Got Wolves again, haven't we?
We've got Wolves again. I mean, shock. I mean, we seem to play them like
playing
every
4 times a
year,
year, don't we? At this point, seriously,
it's ridiculous. Even Wolves fans say it. I'm sick of playing.
I was talking to a mate actually from Dave from Talking Wolves. I was just like, mate, I'm sick to the sight of you guys now. He said literally the same. Just had enough of it.
I know. It honestly happens so much. But in terms of a cup run, you know what? I can see another semi-final on the cards.
Okay.
Because again, like the year that we got to the semis, we played against United, we lost on penalties, right? Squad depth then was actually...
It was okay.
It was okay.
It wasn't enough to deal with what we were going for.
This was before we've really got raided of Caicedo, McAllister, etc. That, I think now that we've got those reinforced players in all those positions, I think now we have the foundation to actually make a genuine cup run.
Okay.
And I'm not saying we win it, but I think
we've got the potential to do it. Say if we wanted to sacrifice one or the other, we could do it. Is what you're saying.
Exactly.
Yeah,
and
I agree.
It might even be a case of we make it to the final, we end up against like Man City. Again, fair enough. They steamroll us.
You lose and you lose, isn't it?
Yeah. But I honestly think a semi-final in the cup is not out of the question. Whether it's Carabao FA, I don't know.
Don't care.
To be fair, either would still be a serious experience.
Yeah. No, I can settle with that. But yeah, Louis, these are big claims. I'm liking it though. This is what it's for. This is exactly what I designed this setup for. Shout out to Brett, by the way, for letting us be down there. Brett, absolute legend, giving us a couple beers as well.
Caxton is phenomenal.
Yeah, I've got nothing left in this one. There's no point me even trying to toast it on this. But I mean, it's just it makes it work. But let's finalise with this then. So bold predictions out of the way. Hear them in the comments below.
Yeah,
we got the predictions in. Let's just get a sort of how are you feeling? How are you feeling after analysing everything? The final thought in 2 sentences. Brighton for the rest of 24-25.
I think obviously it's only been a few games, right? It's been I wouldn't even say it's been a mixed start. I think it's been a very positive start. We can't rest on our laurels. The fact that we're only one of 4, I think, undefeated sides in the Prem still. I think we're actually in a fairly good position. And I think transfer-wise, it's probably been one of the best windows we've had.
Ever, yeah.
Ever.
By far.
Yeah,
by far.
It's been it's been really good to see that we've genuinely taken the time to reinforce, and especially in the positions that we've really needed to cover, because we really did struggle losing Caicedo and McAllister and not adequately replacing them.
Yeah.
I say adequately, I mean we didn't replace anybody at
No.
all. We just had to shoehorn in players that weren't suited to those two
Yeah,
roles. But now we've actually taken the time to put players in those positions where we really needed to have that strength. I think we're going to see a different Brighton.
Yeah, I hope you're right. I'll keep my reservations on probably Hertzler's style is obviously quite intense, could lead to injuries, could lead to maybe a little bit of dips in form, could lead to gaps. So that'll be my reservation, sort of what could change my mind as we see more and more games. But feeling good, feeling confident as we should.
As we should.
But Louis, you've been fantastic. Thank you very much for
Thank
joining
you
me.
for having
I would
me.
shake hand, but this will go everywhere, so I'm not going to do it. I said it to Isaac last time. It's just pointless.
Yeah.
So we can just do it back in the old lockdown days and do a fake
yeah.
fist bump. But thank you very much for watching. Of course, make sure you like, comment, subscribe, and follow Louis as well. Louis, do you want to plug yourself into the camera?
I'll put. I'm going to edit this. I'll put all my socials on the screen. You can
Legend.
follow, do whatever.
Top man. Make sure you come down to Caxton, of course, in Brighton, just by the station, actually. So it's very ideal for a match day. And yeah, we'll see you again very, very soon. And goodbye. Thank you.